This is the Knowledge Capital. From Dubai to the world. Quick, powerful insights for entrepreneurs, tech builders, and bold thinkers. Learn how to scale smart, think sharper, and win faster. With real stories, real lessons, and no fluff. Let's turn knowledge into capital.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the Knowledge Capital. We are recording for the first time in 2026 in a video conference with our first invitee. And we are really happy to receive today Robert Siciliano. So Robert, as you know that for the audience, are always promoting and showcasing really interesting people that are using technology or implementing technology in existing industries to scale them. Today is a bit different because Robert has a really unconventional path and journey, but still related to security and technology. And we will discover that with Robert right now. So first of all, Robert, welcome to the Knowledge Capital.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Really happy. Yes, just to start, want to introduce you a bit, who you are, your journey. You are coming from the security analyst to a straight talker. So would love to have a quick intro of who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I provide security awareness training, which we actually call it security appreciation training, which is a little bit different, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And the idea behind what we do, of course, is to get employees, everyday consumers up to speed in regards to managing risk. And what we found over the past 30 plus years is that consumers or employees don't do good with risk due to the fact that we don't necessarily believe in security. And we'll certainly talk about that as well. But more than anything, I'm a girl dad. I'm a dad of a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, married for 25 years. And I started doing what I do, security awareness training, back in the early 90s.
Okay.
I had bought an IBM PS1 Consultant, which was the make and model of a computer that had Windows 3.0 and 150 megabyte hard drive back in the day. I had to buy a separate card so I could connect my computer to the dial-up connection to AOL.
Okay.
I had the ability to accept credit cards in order for my small business where I sold personal security products back in the day. And within a month of connecting my computer to the internet, AOL, I was hacked. And I suffered about $3,000 in credit card fraud. And back then, credit card fraud, internet scamming, black hat hackers wasn't really a thing. I did not know what happened to me other than I lost thousands of dollars in credit card fraud. And when I reached out to the merchant or to the Visa MasterCard, they explained to me what happened to me. And as upset as I was, being in the business of personal protection back then, which is the baseline of what I did, I was teaching real estate agents personal security because real estate agents in the US get murdered, right? So I was teaching them self-defense. And my business revolving around personal protection at the time was physical security. And now what happened to me virtually was that I was hacked, and that meant virtual security. And so when that occurred, as upset as I was losing the money that I did, I wanted to understand what they did and how they did it. And it didn't take long to figure out that internet crime was already becoming a problem. And as it became more of an issue, I started to speak more to it in my programs. So personal security back in the 90s for me became more than just in the physical world. Now it was something in the virtual world as well. And really, like the way that we coined the virtual world was really just AOL. Like we didn't know the difference between the internet or AOL because it was just all AOL. Because AOL is the only game in town,
Yeah. It was not the digital age so far.
Yeah. It was dial-up connection to the internet via a DSL modem, right?
Yeah.
And so I started to focus on that and speak about it and teach others in regards to the risks that we faced in the physical world as it was in the virtual world as well. By the early 2000s, data breaches started to become a common occurrence. But it still wasn't mainstream media wasn't really talking about it back then. And it wasn't until like the aughts, 2004, 5, and 6, that you started to see national attention to data breaches. And I had already been talking about it for 10 years at that point. And here we are, 30 plus years later, I'm still talking about it. But what has changed in the past 30 years is criminal hackers today are much more organized in such a way where they treat fraud as a business. What hasn't changed, and it really hasn't changed much at all, is consumers, even employees, and our idea and understanding of risk, digital literacy, cyber hygiene. We're not doing much in the way of different today than we did back then.
And especially because we are also trusting third-party providers as they are the messy, that they are here for our safety and so on. But for example, with all the tools that we have available online, we are really close to lose a bit the appetite to learn by ourselves how to protect ourselves. So that makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Yeah, and that is fundamentally because security, I believe, goes against our core beliefs. We as human beings are born as an interdependent species. And interdependent means we are dependent upon each other for our survival. So we trust by default as a result of that. Trust is how we engage each other. When you require each other for procreation and you trust by default, that creates what we call the human blind spot.
Yeah. Wanted to talk about that because what is defining the first reason security program fail nowadays? Because this is a big point. As I said, we have a lot of trust in the framework and all we have set. So what defines the first reason of security program failure nowadays?
It's really not that complicated when you think about it. Security programs fail today because we don't recognize the human aspect, the biological aspect of security awareness training. Security programs fail when they treat psychological vulnerability as a technology problem. First and foremost, organizations spend millions patching software, but ignore the ultimate attack surface, which is what I call the wetware versus software. The wetware is the human brain, right?
Yeah.
Wetware versus software, essentially, we as human beings, again, designed to trust by default. Security awareness training today is based on the technological aspects of security, but it's not addressing the human aspects of security. Programs fail ultimately because they do not address what I call the human blind spot, our biological hardwiring default to trust. Okay. We default to trust. And when an employee is hit with, say, manufactured urgency, like an AI cloned voice of a CEO demanding a wire transfer or else, their brain bypasses logic and jumps into action.
Of course.
Because the employee just wants to satisfy the CEO.
Yeah.
And no technical firewall can stop a breach when an authorized user willingly opens the door to fraud.
Yeah.
Because they're human and they want to please the boss. So instead of fixing this, companies rely on boring, compliance-based training that creates what I call the security appreciation gap. Essentially, employees know the rules intellectually, but lack the emotional muscle memory to enforce those rules under pressure. Because biologically, we trust and biologically, we want to please others. That's just how we are, So security ultimately fails because we haven't trained the human brain to pause and verify in a synthetic or digital world.
Yeah. The self-awareness, self-education, regarding compliance and procedures to protect. And no, this is very interesting. And I think you have a very particular and very interesting story about an extreme demonstration of all of that, that you bought a working ATM on Craigslist. So this is, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, I've found over the years that unconventional security awareness training is really what gets people's attention. It's what gets people to see how and why they are vulnerable. And so the philosophy behind this extreme demonstration isn't just about shock value. It's about a surgical strike on current boring security awareness training. So as we discussed, most security awareness training relies on boring PowerPoints that tell people what might happen. That passive approach completely fails to close that security appreciation gap because it doesn't trigger an emotional response. So I've always felt that like basic security awareness training is head based. It's from the neck up. Whereas security appreciation training is from the heart up. In order to change minds, you need to change hearts. You need to affect people emotionally. Humans are hardwired with what we discussed as the human blind spot. That's the inherent denial that the systems we trust every day are actually fragile. And to hack the wetware, the human brain, you have to bypass all intellectual understandings and force a visceral reaction, which is what most frauds generally do. That's what they're designed to do. They create that manufactured urgency. So when I buy a $750 for Craigslist, I ultimately pulled thousands of real consumer credit card records from it instantly.
Yeah, so just for the audience to understand, Robert purchased on Craigslist a working ATM, a real ATM. So this is and he's telling us how it's easy to hack people when they are not putting a firewall and security processes.
Yeah, because we see an ATM out in the street or up against a building or at a gas station or inside a convenience store. We just trust that everything about that ATM is legit, So I purchased this ATM off of Craigslist for $750, not even knowing that was even an option up until I saw it online available. And since then, like they're all over Facebook Marketplace, they're all over Craigslist. You can buy them on eBay. Once I purchased it, we learned shortly afterwards that there were thousands of credit card numbers still on the device, still in its hard drive, which they call an EEPROM. And once we extracted that data, like that in and of itself was a data breach, right? And then beyond that, what we did next was we installed a small wireless camera and a skimming device because I have access to skimming devices, and we deployed the ATM. I mean, we put it out there on the street.
Yeah.
And people started to use it, and we filmed it, So it just shows how we just trust by default. And what that does is it instantly shatters the "it can't happen to me" illusion is what that does, And so we don't just talk about the vulnerability. We shove the undeniable proof right in front of them is what we do. It is the necessary wake-up call required to break through complacency, which we all possess, right? And by making the invisible threat undeniably visible, ultimately we shift audiences from passive compliance to actively building their security appreciation of risk enough to change their behavior.
Yeah.
So why do I do this? Ultimately, because simply telling you that our systems are fragile doesn't really work. It doesn't close that security appreciation gap. We are biologically wired with the human blind spot default to trust. And so what makes the ATM scam real is that it shows you, yeah, we're vulnerable, and here's an example of it in the physical world.
Yeah. So according to you, let's talk about the main reason, the core belief. Why are humans, I don't speak about hackers, why regular people, humans, is the ultimate deciding factor in security, according to you? I think we understand a bit more the awareness and so on. This is the last trigger, but I would love to have your insight on this.
So, sometimes I repeat myself, which I think is important. Hackers really rarely break through technical firewalls any longer, right? Companies have a tremendous amount of security in place. Like you put your money in a bank because that's where it is most secure versus your mattress, you know? And so hackers rarely break through technical firewalls anymore. They simply just log in. And how do they just log in? They log in because we as humans use the same passcode across multiple accounts. There are as many as 15 billion passwords on the dark web, you know, and humans ultimately are the deciding factor because our wetware, our brain, is the true attack surface. We hack humans, right? Predators exploit the human blind spot, as we say, our default to trust, and they bypass multi-million-dollar stacks of software, right? A hacker can deploy the most sophisticated AI, but it still requires a human to click the link, authorize the wire transfer, or hand over a passcode. That simple. Technology is just a locked door, and humans hold the key, right? The person in the chair remains the ultimate decider between safety and security and catastrophe. That's the issue. It's those in the chair that still, and maybe forever, I don't know, might be the ultimate vulnerability.
Yeah, yeah. That's very true, and this is why we wanted to have you on this podcast, because we always speak about tech, implementing tech, but we don't speak about the real firewall and the real responsibility that all humans have. And I think that make a lot of sense now to go and speak a bit more about your industry focus and the problem you really solve. Really want to dive deep into the corporate security industry and the specific problems your work is addressing.
So prior to COVID, I was on the road, airplanes, hotels, rent-a-cars, speaking at conferences, getting in front of, employees quite frequently. And then of course COVID hit, and that was it. Like I just flatlined. I was home, nowhere to go. Planes aren't taking off, or at least they're not going to conferences. Companies solely relied on compliance-based phishing simulation training. That was it. And it was basically phishing simulation training is a talking head or an animation talking at the employee, telling the employee what to do, explaining risk, do this, don't do this, or these are the consequences. Okay. And from my perspective, that is putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. Okay. It doesn't really train the human in regards to their own risks. It doesn't actually talk to that human where they're at in their own lives. It doesn't make security personal. The corporate security industry is failing because it treats a psychological vulnerability as an IT problem. Again,
Yeah,
it's not addressing the human.
exactly. That's true.
Enterprises spend billions on technical perimeters, yet remain defenseless against what we call the scamiverse because they ignore the wetware, the human, the brain. Traditional enterprise security relies on what we call security theater. It's mindless compliance-based training that creates that massive security appreciation gap. Employees intellectually know the rules, like they know the rules, okay? And that creates, those rules mean that the bad guys work around those rules with what we call the manufactured urgency, right? Again, their biological default to trust, that human blind spot. Hackers don't break through firewalls. They use AI, high precision impersonation, whether it's through phishing or text messages or phone calls, to simply ask your employees to open that door.
Yeah.
And the
Now,
employee complies.
of course. No, the real threat for me today is really the clone of the voice, cloning. We can see now videos that if we see what the AI was doing 3 years ago and now compared to the video generation, we are almost really close to don't see the difference between reality and generated. So imagine in the next 2 years. So I think the real threat is really here. The last contact, the point of contact between the boss, the manager, and the executor for impersonation. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah,
So yes,
and we're already seeing it. The problem that I solve ultimately is the human element. I transform passive liability into active defense. To get that human thinking intellectually, connected emotionally to the information, we need to replace the current blunt hammer approach of compliance training with a scalpel, right? Carving it out, of genuine behavioral change. We need that in order to get people to react differently, right? Intellectually and emotionally. The idea is to rewire teams to stop acting as digital puppets and start verifying every critical request, ensuring that when technology fails, because it does, that humans do not fail. They become your line of defense, a human sensor network.
So if we speak about the cultural gap, if we want to address the perception of security leaders, there is a lot of people now when we think about security, or is paranoid. And we understand that is killing a bit the adoption because of the paranoia. So people put a distance between what they should learn and integrate as professional or human being and what, kind of being paranoid. I'm pretty sure you will talk to me about that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when I get in front of a live audience, I ask them a series of questions. So my presentations are a dialogue, it's a conversation, versus most security awareness training is a monologue. It's being talked at. I talk to and with, there's dialogue, right? And I ask questions. And the questions I ask are, how many of you are using a different passcode across each of your accounts? If I get 15% of the room to raise their hand, that's a lot, which means 85% are using the same passcode across multiple accounts. And then I ask, how many of you are using two-factor authentication? If I get 20%, that's a lot. So
Wow.
80 to 90% of employees are using the same passcode across multiple accounts and not using two-factor authentication, which shows that they don't engage in security effectively. And in this line of questioning, I also ask them about home security, because personal security is also home security. And I ask, how many of you have a home security system? Which I have one, of course. And the answer is generally about 15 to 20% have a home security system, which means 80% doesn't. And then I ask, okay, so why don't you have a home security system? The most common answer that I get is, well, we don't have a home security system because I don't want to live like that.
Mm.
And I say, well, what does that actually mean? What does I don't want to live like that mean? They say, well, I don't want to have to worry. I don't want to be paranoid, they say, as if installing a home security system is going to make you paranoid. That's what we think. What does that actually mean? It means that when people define security, they define security as it's something that you need to worry about.
Yeah.
It's something that you need to, it's something that's going to make you paranoid. And actually, they believe that people who engage in the process of security, they must worry all the time. They must think people are out to get them. They must be paranoid. This is what I've been hearing for 30 years. And if people's view of security is paranoia, which the medical community defines as a mental health disorder, a disease,
Yeah.
right? Why would you ever want to engage in the process of security if it's about paranoia?
Yeah.
So instead,
It's
instead
black
of
or white. It's black or white. It's like they don't care at all or they are paranoid.
exactly. And so in order to bridge that gap, in order to change people's hearts, to change people's minds, you've got to break down what security is and what security isn't. And it isn't about paranoia. And once they start to see that, yeah, security is not about paranoia, it's about gaining control. It's about managing risk. It's about putting systems in place. It's about making better decisions. It's about putting your seatbelt on because it's the smart thing to do. Now they look at security as, oh, this is something that I want. This is something that I need. This is different than what I thought it was. And once you bridge that gap, then they're interested in consuming the what to do in regards to managing risk.
Yeah. So how do you get employees if we come back on the corporate? Because I think that will talk to a lot of people if we speak about corporate examples. How do you get employees to genuinely care about security? What's your process? I think you have a process or a solution for them.
Yeah, so that process really boils down to, understanding and recognizing, first and foremost, security theater, right? So security theater is one of those issues that we rely on in regards to security awareness training. It's kind of a show that we put on that's really ineffective at this point. Organizations spend millions on automated phishing simulations and boring compliance videos to check the box for auditors is what we do, and I call this the hammer approach. It creates this massive security appreciation gap. Employees know the rules, but they feel zero personal connection to urgency that applies to them. And the idea is to make security apply to them. So the idea is to dismantle this security theater. And you solve that by engaging them in making all security personal. And making all security personal ultimately means making it personal to their physical being. Like security, when you think about it, personal security is violence prevention. And violence prevention is obviously, predators and thieves that mean to do us physical harm. And so when we think about security from that point of view, we look at it holistically. Like if all security is personal to me, then like your identity, there's nothing more personal than your own identity, right? And so physical security and personal security today are really one and the same. And when you treat security as being personal to them, to the learner, now they begin to look at risk a little bit differently in the physical world, but more so in the virtual world as well. They look at password management, two-factor authentication, protecting their child's identity, protecting their data and their dollars, right? When we look at security as personal, we treat it as protecting the people that we love. And people will engage in security more effectively if it means protecting their spouse and their children, their own data, their own dollars, their own identities. And when you speak to it from that perspective, the employee begins to look at basic compliance-based training a little bit differently because it also can solve their own personal security problems. But we're not currently doing that. We're just putting the cart before the horse, compliance-based training, do this or else. And the employee is like, I don't want to deal with this. This is not my problem.
Yeah.
But when you make it about them, look, we are what I consider a selfish, self-interested creature. We just are, and as a selfish, self-interested creature, we first and foremost care about ourselves first, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's natural and it's normal. You need to care for yourself first. You've got to take care of your own physical being, your own body. You've got to get a good night's sleep, consume foods and fluids. You've got to do that stuff. And security goes right along with that. You've got to take care of your own security first in order to protect the data in which you are entrusted with in the corporate environment.
Yeah. So I think what's for you the solution to that? Because that can be confusing to a lot of people that are listening. Okay, where I start from? What should I do now to make myself aware and awake about that? Because we know that when we have the information coming to us, then we can develop a kind of sensitivity and interest, and we can see where we can implement some strategy or some awareness where we were not used to do.
Okay.
So what's your solution?
So as we've been discussing, making security intensely personal, right? The corporate industry fails at adoption because it asks employees to care about the company's bottom line, right? And the idea is to get to the point with the human, get to them to understand and recognize risk personally first. Demanding that employees care about corporate data just fuels resentment and what we call security theater, right? To get employees to genuinely care, you have to bypass the corporate jargon and hack their wetware, their brain, right? By appealing to what they fiercely protect, their own money, their own identity, their own family first, okay? We achieve this through two core philosophies that I present on. Number one is what I call the flight attendant rule. The flight attendant rule, like you're on the airplane, the flight attendant is providing you with safety instructions, right? And she says, you must put on your own security, your own oxygen mask first. Why? Because you can't help others unless you help yourself first. Okay. So the kitchen table effect is essentially when you teach an employee how to stop a threat at home, they take that lesson home to their family. They discuss it over dinner. They build a visceral, emotional muscle memory that a corporate PowerPoint could never achieve. At home, they cement the lessons for life. And ultimately, that cements the lessons in the corporate environment as well. This ultimately closes the human security appreciation gap by curing the human blind spot in their personal lives. They naturally bring that vigilant, verified mindset back into the office, right? And when they learn to protect their own legacy, their own information, their own families, they organically become what I call the strategic human firewall. That's ultimately the solution to this. And anybody can do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, I think maybe this is my point of view, but that can be a factor. Is like you are based in the US, and in the US, you have the right to have a gun at home to defend yourself. So maybe that can be also a thing. Though I don't need to understand. This is not the case in the rest of the world. Only in the US, you are allowed to have it. So that's maybe a point that can put some distance on. Taking seriously the security procedures and so on. I don't know. I'm just dropping that like this, but maybe that can be.
It's the firearms conversation is an interesting one because most people in the US that possess a firearm, don't even know how to use it. Not only do they not know how to use it for personal protection, they don't know how to safely even own it. And people just engage in purchasing firearms without properly training with that firearm.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Which means they become more of a danger to themselves
of course
and others, which is quite the conundrum. You've got 400 million firearms in the US, millions and millions of people who possess them that don't even effectively know how to use them. And if they carry them every day, again, they're more of a danger to others. So our culture is such that we're not effectively engaged in recognizing risk in our own personal lives first, whether it's protecting our own identities, protecting our own homes, protecting our own physical beings. And many of us think that buying a firearm, okay, I'm all set now.
Yeah.
And they haven't even thought that entire process through. My philosophy is also that your brain is your best defense weapon. Understanding how to recognize risk, engaging in proper training to mitigate that risk is what someone needs to do before they choose a personal defense item, a gun, to protect themselves. And a lot of the same people that have a firearm don't even have a home security system.
This is crazy. Yeah. They just want to have a gun. I have a gun. I am safe. Next.
No.
This is what they think.
Yeah. This is what I'm up against.
I think there is a deep work, and especially in your market in the US, of just making people aware, knowing that they don't know. First of all, it's a good point. And I'm sure that, yes, I don't know what is the state of detaining firearms in the US. If you want to apply for a new license, you need to have a training procedure. I don't know how it works. But I think, yes, teaching how to use what you have first is very important. We can speak about that with the tools that we have, because now we are using AI, we are using SaaS platform, and a lot of things that are automating, that are easing the life and easing and bringing things faster to us. But I'm not sure that there is the proper training of all the tools that we are using, that can be digital or physical. So the training programs around everything we have first can help, I think, a lot of and solve a lot of problem we have right now. So I think this is very, very interesting, and I would love to enter a bit deeper, and especially for our audience that is more tech oriented and would love to have like practical use case in their daily life. So for example, if we speak about AI, this is a big thing. AI, the threats around AI are very, very, very wide and very, very, very in our daily life. So I would love to provide some practical example and discuss the application of your solutions to modern AI driven threats. So are you comfortable if I give you some use case and some problem and see how you can add this strategic human firewall? Because I really want to have the audience to understand how you can solve the problem, because at the end this is also to show the real value of your work and why it's so important to think about that at any level of corporate decision.
Yeah, let's do it. Yep.
Okay, great. So if we speak about use case one, building a firewall, for example, you have a 5,000 person company needs to move beyond the classic compliance because there are 5,000. So the first 30 days of implementing your strategic human firewall program, what does it look like in general, in the big lines?
Yeah, so it's not as complicated as it seems, right? So most organizations have like an all hands on event, right? All hands on, which means generally like employees get in a large auditorium, let's say, right? Or you have a portion of the employees in an auditorium and the rest are viewing online, right? An all hands on event where the stakeholders in the organization, company officers, the CISO, right? The CTO, CIO, it could be marketing, it could be the CEO, are all engaging the employees, right? So I did a presentation not too long ago in California. I spoke to one of the leading American semiconductor and wireless technology companies, best known for powering billions of smartphones, tablets, IoT devices. They basically drive the 5G connectivity, and they hold extensive patents and portfolios on most of the communication standards that we enjoy today. Anyways, I spoke to about 200 of their employees in an auditorium, right? And it was broadcast to about 4,000 of their employees. So the 200 employees acted as the voice of the rest of the company. So as I engaged in a dialogue with the 200 employees, 1,000 were being represented. Make sense? Okay.
Yes.
And so the conversation was around, that we trust by default, that we function in denial, that most of us don't lock our doors, that we're using the same passcodes across multiple accounts, that we're not using two-factor authentication. Just pointing out our human vulnerabilities, our aversion to security, our functioning in denial, and all that stuff. Kind of like breaking the human down, getting them to look at the myths revolving around security and why we look at it as paranoia, just to kind of like make them look at why culturally security is resisted overall. And once they understand that, then they start raising their hands and asking questions in regards to, okay, so how do we avoid the risk? How do we manage our passcodes? How do we enable two-factor authentication? What's the best home security system, right? And what I do is not much different than what the chief information security officer can do. The CISO can do the exact same thing. So in that first 30 days, the CISO needs to make themselves a bit more human. And what that basically means is, like, from the CEO to the executive board, right? All the stakeholders that control the budget of the chief information security officer, they need to be addressed as well by the CISO, okay? Everybody in our lives, including the CISO, you and I, we all have somebody in our life that is kind of clueless with security. Your mom, your dad,
Yeah, of course.
your sister, right? We all have these clueless people that don't know what link to click when they're searching something on Google. We all have that. And so by making security personal to the CISO, to the audience at the all hands on event, right? Take our parents, for example. They're being bombarded with phone calls and text messages. They're watching late night TV and dropping credit cards on vitamins that they don't need, right? They're watching, they're being scammed left and right. Making security personal means making those in charge of your budget the board, the CEO, the COO, right? Talking about yourself personally and how your mom and dad or widowed sister is being slammed by romance scams and how they're vulnerable and how everybody in the corporate environment is vulnerable. I mean, heck, like every presentation I do, somebody in the audience asks me, how do I know what link is okay to click when I do a Google search? And as you engage at the all hands on event and make it personal to everybody in the room, those who are responsible for the budget, those who are responsible for clicking the links, receiving those scammy text messages, engaging over the phone, you make it personal to all of them. Now they start to see risk a little bit differently. Now they start looking at the compliance-based training that you provide them in the future as more of a challenge that they want to embrace. In the first 30 days, the key is to bring it down a little bit, to bring it back to each of the employees and where they're at in their own lives, to make it personal to the CISO, to the CEO, to the COO, and all the employees at the all hands events. And before you know it, the employees begin to communicate with the CISO in such a way where they look at him or her as somebody who's there for them, that they're partners in this process, versus from the CISO's point of view, do this or else, which is how they currently look at company executives that are requiring them to engage in security training that they don't want to do.
Yeah. And do you have a like priority level? For example, when you enter in a company, do you talk first to the C-level executive and then you go to the layer of the like traditional employees, or you take everyone in the same room at the same level and make them aware as human before being aware as a professional?
That's a great question. Everybody at the same time. You know, when it all boils down to it, we all have the same worries, the same concerns, the same fears. Our parents are all just as vulnerable. All right. Our children are all just as vulnerable. We all have the same cares and concerns. When you address everybody all at the same time, it's interesting because when I do a security awareness training, when I walk in the room and I'm introduced and I get on the platform, I look at my audience and I look at the audience, and this is what they're doing. For those of you who are just listening, I'm crossing my arms.
Yeah.
And I have a scowl on my face.
Yeah.
That's what the audience is doing when I walk in the room. Okay. And they're all looking at me, basically saying to themselves, okay, security guy, tell me something I don't already know. And as I am asking them various questions and pointing out the absurdities of not having a password manager and using the same passcode across multiple accounts, and that there are 15 billion passwords on the dark web, and that using two-factor authentication essentially makes the data that the bad guy already has useless to the thief, and engaging in like basic 101 home security, like locking your doors and having a home security system, and pointing out all the risks that we face and the simple solutions that we can embrace. What happens is, as I'm engaged in a dialogue with the employees,
This is
their
the knowledge
arms
capital
begin
from
to
Dubai
kind
to the
of
world.
lower.
Quick, powerful
And their
insights for
body language
entrepreneurs,
begins to
tech
relax,
builders, and
they
bold
physically
thinkers.
actually
Learn how
lean
to scale
into the
smart,
conversation.
think
Like their
sharper,
heads begin to
and
move
win
forward.
faster.
It's
With
really
real
fascinating
stories,
to watch.
real
right?
lessons,
And as they're
no
leaning
fluff.
into the conversation,
Let's turn
and as their
knowledge
arms are going down
into capital.
their hands go up,
Yeah.
because now they begin to ask questions.
Of course.
You know, and so now you have buy-in, and the buy-in is what you want. So it's gone from head-based intellectual security awareness training to heart-based security appreciation training. They go from like not really thinking they need this to, oh my God, this is about me. This is about my family. This is about protecting my loved ones. And in every single presentation that I've ever done, at the end of the program, people come up to me over and over and over again. And they say to me, you know what? I really didn't want to come here today. And you know what? I'm only here because my company made me come here today. Because, you know, but really, I didn't think it was going to be like this, but I'm so glad I came because this was great. And you know what? I really wish that my spouse was here because he or she would have really loved it.
Yeah.
And that's what security awareness training should be or could be. You know, you make it about them And now, like, they take it home. Like I talked about the kitchen table effect. They talk about it amongst their loved ones, cementing the lessons for life. That's what it can and should be and can easily be if company executives embrace the concept of making it personal to the user, making it personal to the employee.
Yeah, yeah, no, and what I love in that kind of training, it's like when you come, you leave with a new awareness, a new way to see things. And this is the magic of that kind of training. It's like now you can implement that in every aspect of your life. And as you said, the kitchen talk, it's like you are here with your family talking about things, and then that is giving you some ideas and improving the way you see security and making security a part of your daily experience. So that's great.
Yeah, one last thing about that. Like I'm a dad, like I mentioned, a girl dad. I've got a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old. And, I've raised my family, I've raised my girls by communicating with them one-on-one, like literally sitting them down and talking about the problems that they may have in their lives or the issues they may face and having one-on-one conversations and explaining life lessons, right? Situations that I've been in, observations that I've had, things that I've incorporated into my life that have made my life successful, right? That's how I've raised my family. And I don't know that we can train employees on a video. I don't know that you can raise a family on a video. I think that security requires a dialogue. Because there's fear, there's worry, there's concern, there's this misunderstandings of what security is. And I think that conversation, and it needs to be a conversation about security, ultimately at some point has to happen in person, in addition to watching a video, compliance-based training. Again, you can't put the cart before the horse. You've got to have a dialogue, the same way you raise your family with your employees in order to get them to care about security.
Yeah. So there is nice futures for new generation CSO in the companies now. If they are aware about that and learn those things, that can be interesting. I want to talk about deeper. We talked about the videos, about our permanent digital connections, the AI threats. This is a problem. The rise of AI deepfakes, for example, voice cloning for social and engineering. If you want to have a kind of solution for that, what are the top real world scenarios enterprises must train for now? Not tomorrow, not in 3 months, because we know things are moving really fast. How does a human firewall, as you say, defend against this?
Yeah. So the idea behind what I've coined or termed as the strategic human firewall is, as we talked about, the corporate security industry is stuck in a losing battle right now. They keep building, taller technological firewalls to fight the scamiverse, right? While ignoring the fact that the front door is wide open to your wetware, your employees, right? And the solution to the human blind spot isn't another compliance video, more software, or the continuing charade of security theater. The solution is transforming your workforce into what I call the strategic human firewall. This isn't about passive awareness. It's about active, reliant defense. The strategic human firewall is a proactive governance. It's a governance. It's a mindset that marks the fundamental shift from I trust what I see to I verify everything. Okay. And when an employee is hit with that manufactured urgency that we talked about, and today it's the AI driven high precision impersonation, right, of their CEO, their biological default to trust kicks in, but it must be overridden by the ingrained muscle memory that we create with that strategic human firewall, ultimately closing the security appreciation gap. Okay. We empower employees to deploy what we call the AAA protocol. And the AAA protocol is analyze, analyze what's happening in front of you, authenticate the request that's being made, communicate with the person who, is sending it to you and via a different medium, and ultimately act, right? And that act might be out of band verification. That's a phone call, an email, a text message, knock on your colleague's door. That AAA protocol, analyze, authenticate, act, the out of band verification really is what needs to take place going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of real two-factor authentication, but in real life. It's like each time you see, for example, I come back on the deepfake and voice cloning. If you are not sure, you need to have another way to verify available right now to be sure that what I am seeing, I can trust because I verified.
That is exactly correct. The out of band verification is a form of two-factor authentication. It's not just you taking it at face value, it's you confirming that it is in fact the request that's being made by the person who's making it is in fact legitimate. And that where that request money is going to be going to, the wiring instructions themselves, whatever it might be, that it's legit. And that needs to take place both in our personal lives and in our professional lives. What we're seeing right now with voice cloning is that someone will get the likeness of, say, your child, your daughter, and clone his or her voice and use that over a phone call you and say that she's being kidnapped and you've got to wire money to a designated account or else. And that scam, as ridiculous as it sounds, is effective because when you hear your daughter screaming in the background and it is in fact her voice due to the fact that the cloned voice was taken from her Instagram or her Snapchat or from Facebook Reels, whatever it might be, your body is going to react to that emotionally. But by using that AAA protocol, now you intellectually stop, analyze, authenticate, and then act. That has to be done in the corporate environment as well. We've seen situations where employees have wired as much as $25 million.
Yeah. So many stories. Especially with the crypto, for example, the early successful crypto companies, it was worse because the authentication and the processes were not like a bank at the first place with crypto. It was really, really simple to go to send 25 million on the blockchain to another wallet, and then it was done. So yes. I think the 2FA in real world make a lot of sense. Last point that is very important to come back on the corporate. This is the C-suite communication, getting buy-in from the CEO and board without being seen as an alarmist. What's the 60-second narrative to make human risk real to the leadership? What's your pitch? You come, you say that the CEO, I have no time. Just tell me, you have 45 seconds to put the alert and explain to me why it's so valuable to think about that.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but think of it like this. The CISO is talking to the COO. The COO controls the budget, okay? The CISO should talk about themselves. Make it about themselves. And when I say make it about themselves personally, okay? Don't necessarily talk about spreadsheets. Don't talk about budgets. Talk about themselves. And what that means is, like I talked about earlier, talk about your own family. Talk about the risks that they face in their own lives, how their own families are dealing with the same things that they are. Make it personal. Connect with them because the COO also has a mother that keeps clicking links that they shouldn't be clicking. They also have a dad that might be lonely, that might make investments in crypto that he shouldn't be, right? These are scared humans that don't know what to do. And they've never had an opportunity to discuss these security issues with an expert like the CISO, right? Look, I see how people revere teachers and firefighters and law enforcement, first responders, nurses. These are all our heroes, right? They're all our heroes. But you know who the unsung heroes are in the story? It's the chief information security officers. It's the CTOs. It's the CIOs. I am asked in every single presentation that I do at the end of the program, who's winning? The good guys or the bad guys? Who's winning this cybersecurity battle? And the answer, of course, is the good guys are winning. Of course, the good guys are winning. And you know how we know the good guys are winning? Because we have electricity, because we have clean running water, because we have critical infrastructures that function, because we have a banking system. If the good guys were not winning, we would be living in the dark like it was the 1800s, because the bad guys want that. The bad guys want us to fail. They want us to be living in the dark. They don't want us to have clean running water. They don't want us to be able to go to the grocery store to buy food. So the good guys are, in fact, winning the battle. But the only reason why they're winning the battle is because they're doing their jobs effectively. But with AI and deep fakes and voice cloning, down the road, they may not be winning the battle in the future. And so it's important to impress upon those who are responsible for your budget to make it personal to them. When they see in their own lives that their own moms and their own dads and their own families are vulnerable to these various forms of fraud, then they see how all their employees are equally at risk.
Yeah. So to close a bit this chapter, I would love to give a bit of immediate value to the audience. And I want, for example, to give what would be a single no-cost action an IT leader can take this week to instantly reduce human risk? What he can do with what he has, nothing to buy, just something to do. What would be your advice?
I would say to have that risk manager send out a broadcast, send out an email to all employees, explaining to employees a situation that he's encountered in his own or his or her own life in regards to an email they received, a text message they got, a phone call they got, or maybe even a loved one, and how they were affected, and what that CISO had to do to manage that risk, to make sure that the situation didn't blow up, get out of control, where they didn't lose money, where their loved one wasn't negatively impacted, and make it personal to them, and so that those employees can take that exact same lesson and they can further that lesson in their own personal lives as well.
Yeah.
And make that CISO accessible to the employees. Look at that CISO in the work that they do is important. And being accessible to employees should be important to the CISO because it is important to the employees. They're looking for help. The employees are looking for help. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for an expert that they can talk to about the security issues that they face in their own lives. And by becoming accessible in that way, by making it personal with that broadcast email, you gain more trust. And gaining more trust in that relationship between the frontline employees and the CISO, I think is important in such a way where they look at that company executive in a much fonder way.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Robert. It was a very, very intense, full of information. What is great is everything is recorded. People can watch and listen on all the traditional platforms. We will be on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast. We are for the French guys on Deezer. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify. Just to close this, we know that our audience are great readers. So do you have like a book to advise them to read or something? I know there is your books also. You are a writer, so you're a best-selling author, no? If I'm not
Yes,
wrong.
I've written 5 actually. I would say, for your particular audience, just connect with me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn is where my most current information is. I'm usually posting to about my 12 or 15,000 followers every couple of weeks. My most cutting edge information is on my LinkedIn. So search Robert Siciliano on LinkedIn. You can also head to my website. My website is protectnowllc.com. Again, protectnowllc.com.
Okay, great. Anyway, we will put all the contacts in the description of the podcast. When we will post on social, you will be able to directly connect with Robert on LinkedIn, through email, on his website. If he has any link on anything that he wants to show you and promote, if you want to see a bit more, you will be able to see it in the description. So Robert, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
It was a very good good time, and we speak soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Knowledge Capital. Follow us, drop a comment, and share the game. Follow Limitless Capital on LinkedIn and Instagram. Stay sharp, stay limitless.